Welcome to the branching office hours. So if you're not familiar with office hours is a time that the designer advocates as well as other Figmates from Figma will come on and we will talk about a new feature, sometimes do interviews with people that use Figma at their organizations, best practices and things like that, and an opportunity for you to ask questions as well too. So today we're going to be focused on branching. Let's go ahead and get started here. A couple of just housekeeping things. The session will be recorded and available on youtube.com/Figma Design. The recordings usually come out about a week later. There is a Q&A button you'll notice too as well. So if you go down to your Zoom menu, you see that separate from the chat, there's a separate thing called the Q&A. Go ahead and click that and you can ask questions in there. It's easier for us to follow the questions there than it is to follow the chat. Feel free to just talk away in the chat as well too if you're enjoying that. Make sure that if you're using the chat, you have it set to panelists and attendees. We do love hearing from you, but it's also great if everyone else can hear you too. And lastly, we do have a code of conduct. Please be kind. We absolutely love the community that we have and we want to keep it that way. And it's everyone's responsibility to make sure that we can do that. So please be respectful of our code of conduct. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. I am Anthony Despezio, one of our designer advocates. I'm joined here with Chad. Chad, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Chad Bergman, and I am also one of our designer advocates here at Figma, and excited to share a bit more about branching with you today.
Yeah, and we've also got a few people from our few Figmates from the team with us today. I'm going to let them just say a quick hello each. So Shayna, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, hi, I'm Shayna. I'm a designer at Figma, work on branching and also design systems features here.
Awesome. Kiko, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, sure. My name is Kiko and I'm a software engineer here at Figma. I'm one of the engineers who work on the branching feature, and I also work on the other collaboration features like comments and other communication tool at Figma.
Awesome. And Oscar.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Oscar. I'm a product designer on the Figma team. I've been doing a little bit of work on the branching project together with Shayna last couple of months, and it's been, super interesting.
That's great. Thank you. And we're really happy to have the three of you on today. These are the real folks that actually built this stuff and really know it inside and out. So we're going to kick off today with just talking a little bit about branching and merging and getting some more information from the team too as well. So a couple more things just to keep in mind. This will be a great session for learning, but if you want to go through the basics and have something to refer back to, there's a Help Center article on branching and merging. We have an intro blog post that sort of explains a little bit about the feature, why we built it, and things like that as well. So you can definitely check those out. Oh, yep. And then we are not in the interactive components beta, so thank you very much for that. We'll go ahead and fix that too as well. This is a branching. If you can tell, thank you, Chad. See, Chad's already in there, taking care of it. A little behind the scenes. If you can tell, the last one that we had was our big interactive components beta as well. So branching beta, perfect. Now let's go ahead and start talking about branching. I'm actually gonna go ahead and just stop sharing for a minute so we can just have a little bit of a conversation here too. I think one of the things that we wanna start with first is just what is branching? And Oscar, I wanna kick it off to you and just sort of ask, in your mind, what is branching? What's the concept?
Right. So essentially, I think of it as like a new way to collaborate in Figma. We all know like multiplayer and like being in the same document and working like that as a way of collaborating. But branching is a bit more structured because you can take a file, split it out into a branch, work in this like a separate branch, separate from the main file, but then also kind of bring your work back again into the main file. So it's like a new way of collaborating and working with files in Figma that's kind of goes kind of beyond multiplayer and adds a bit more structure.
Right. And I think, it's interesting because multiplayer itself is already handling a lot of, I think of branching in the sense of there are other tools out there that have done branching before, other design tools that do it too as well. And a lot of our multiplayer experience already can handle a fair amount of that sort of how do people work together. We don't actually need full branching and merging for every single little change, because when you're working together, you can actually, the multiplayer experience itself takes care of a lot of that just by being live and in the file together as well. This concept also goes further back. Shayna, I don't know, where, do you want to speak a little bit to like sort of where branching originates and where that comes from?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a paradigm that's been around a while in the engineering world. And so for anyone familiar with like Git or Subversion, like there's a long history there of like developers needing to work on projects together, and being able to distribute that work, and also to make changes in a really controlled way. And so like pretty much every engineering team will use some form of branching in order to like make their changes and then merge them back in and make sure that everything works nicely together. And we've basically heard that like as design teams become more mature and do like complex work of maintaining design systems and maintaining like files that you need to be absolutely the source of truth, designers also want that kind of control. So it's something that we're lucky to be able to pull from kind of like this long history of how engineering has done branching and figure out how we can bring that to a designer's workflow.
And make it something approachable for designers too as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Kiko, I want to ask you, so, there's ideas of branching and merging as far as how they can work. It seems like with Figma, we've done some stuff to actually just make sure it works well within Figma. I mean, can you speak to that at all as far as like how we approach that?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, all branching files still have multiplayer, so you can still collaborate with other people on the branches. And they definitely still have version history, so you can always go back to a previous version on branch file and also the main file. And obviously, all the Figma features still exist on both main files and branches.
Right, so you can still even do your real-time collaboration in the branch and then bring back in the main file, doing more real-time collaboration there as well. Real-time collaboration everywhere. Shayna, you mentioned a little bit more about good use cases for design systems. Can you explain a little bit more on that too?
Yeah, so I think like design systems are a case where you usually have like a core team that's maintaining all these components. They have to be like designed in a special way to make sure that they work well across your organization. But sometimes you actually want the rest of your team to be able to contribute in some ways or suggest changes. And so like what we've heard from a lot of customers is like they want the small core team to be able to kind of like maintain this main file. But like with branching, as we've introduced it in Figma, like you don't have to have edit access to the main file to actually like make a branch and suggest changes. So that means like any contributing designer can make a branch, like maybe fix some components to work better for their use case, and then they could submit it for review. And then the people who actually maintain the design system can like decide to accept that change. And so we've seen that this will be like basically a way to give that core design systems team a lot more control over their system and make sure that everything is designed the way it should be.
Yeah, it's awesome. And definitely something we've heard from some of our larger teams too as well, doing really, really complex design systems and distributed design systems as well. I want to the product designers, I wanted to sort of ask a question to both of you, and Oscar, maybe we'll start with you, just around when you were designing this experience, designing this feature, what were either some of the considerations that you were thinking about, anything that was fun or challenging?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so as mentioned, I'm pretty new on the team, so I'm excited to hear what Shane has to say too. But for me, a few things that's been really interesting about this type of product problem is, I mean, as Shane mentioned, this type of workflow is kind of coming from the development world in many cases, and a lot of like the language, like terminology, and kind of ideas are coming from there, and translating those might be a bit tricky because, for example, some of the wording is kind of probably a bit unfamiliar to many, like what's a conflict, like if you talk about it, for example. So things like that, merging, conflicts, branches, like there's a lot of terminology. And then it's a question of like, should we kind of stick with that and kind of keep it consistent with the development world, or should we kind of introduce something new and kind of make it a bit more kind of fitting to like the designer world or like to Figma? So questions like that, super interesting, but also like I mean, we're talking about design systems a lot, but this can be used for many different things. And just thinking of like the kind of infinite amounts of like collaborative kind of ways it can be used is pretty interesting, because every team kind of works slightly differently, even though we're really focusing on design systems.
Yeah, and we're going to look at a few of those examples in just a minute too as well. Shane, anything to add?
Yeah, I think with branching, we've tried to like bring it into this like designer's workflow in a way that is like fairly simplified but still powerful. And so you'll see that it's like you don't need to like make commits in order to basically see their work. Although like I know some people kind of prefer that more structured working style. And so we're starting out with kind of like this easy way of like, you're already working in Figma. Figma will already save your work. And when you like make all your changes and you're ready to merge them back in, you can go ahead and do that and like review that. Branches are kind of automatically archived as you merge them in, because we're kind of assuming that like every branch you make is to improve your main file and like make the status of your main file up to date. And so it's definitely been an interesting challenge of kind of like taking what can be a really complex system and workflow and like bring it into Figma and figure out how it fits into the rest of Figma and like the general workflows we have today.
Yeah, kind of like our flavor of branching and how we see it working well with Figma's design process too.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then one last question, Kiko, I do want to kick it over to you as someone who got to work on the development side of things, and probably coming from a fair amount of understanding of branching and Git workflows already in your own day-to-day work. What was it like for you to work on the development? Anything fun, challenging, or exciting?
Yeah, for sure. I think branching is definitely one of the most interesting technical challenges that I've worked on. I think for code, if you think about it, it's a lot easier to compare if something has changed because it's text-based, right? So you can just compare them line by line, and it's really easy to know if you have changed that line of code. But it's actually a lot more complex and challenging when it comes to a design file. So throughout the process, the team has come up with a few really creative ways to do that. And it was definitely a really fun technical challenge. And also because of this size file format different that I mentioned, a design file versus a text-based file, there's also a lot of challenging problems when it comes to like performance, like how do we make sure it's fast when we compare the changes and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. And we're going to look at a few of those examples. We're going to look at diffing, we're going to look at branching. We'll talk a bit more about it. And I think that this is a great time for us to go ahead and get into the file and actually start looking at some stuff right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Chad to get started. And Chad, I'll let you take it away and go from there.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. And so we've talked a little bit about branching already, and just to show the basic form of branching here in Figma, let's just take a quick look at how to actually create a branch. So here on our canvas, we have a frame with a couple of shapes in here. And let's say that we want to do some exploration. We can go up here and we can say, create a branch. And let's just say we're going to add a frame. Mm-hmm. So as I create this branch, you can see that it's telling me I'm now working in my add frame branch, and I can come in here. I can add in another frame. Perhaps I just want to add another shape in here. Let's say I want to also add another shape up into this side, and let's go green on this one here. So I've now done work within this branch. And if I go back out to my files here and I come back into my main, you can see that it has been unaffected. So I still have a clean main source of truth here. Mm-hmm. And I can quickly come over here and open my branch. And I have all of my work that I had completed here. Now, if I want to say, great, this looks good, let's merge it in. I can come right up here and I can review and merge changes. And it's going to check for any changes. And it's going to say, here I have added a frame And I've also edited an existing frame by adding a new shape into it here. So I can click in and
I might have not placed those shapes inside that frame originally. Sorry about that, but we've got a new frame there as well.
So those other shapes, yes, that's we do it live. And so here we can see there was nothing here before. Here, if we had those other shapes, we could do an overlay here as well and see what was there previously versus what is there now. And then we can hit merge if it all looks good. And we notice that that branch has now been archived. And our main source of truth now has that new frame in here.
Yeah, it's awesome. So branching is, I saw a question come through around like, what exactly does it mean? It's literally, you are branching. You're creating like a tree branch off of your file. So if you think of the trunk of the tree as like the main file itself, the branches are going to give us experiences where we can branch off there, do other things in that version. And then as Chad just showed, actually then merge those changes back into the main flow of the file as well too.
Yes. Yeah. So now that's just the basic portion, but let's take a look at some of the use cases where branching can really be beneficial for teams. Mm-hmm. So, we talked briefly in the introduction about design systems, and, let's say that this is a published asset library. We don't really want to be making changes in the main published piece. Perhaps you have documentation inside of your file. Folks are coming in, maybe they're referencing documentation, or maybe they're using it as a sticker sheet and they're taking the component instances out. You don't want to be updating it and confusing people on what is truly ready for production use versus what's still in an exploratory phase. Mm-hmm. So let's say that we are going to take a look at our buttons and maybe we want to do a different shape or color or change the type. So we can go again and create a branch. And one thing I always like to recommend with branching is think about different workflows that you may have with your development team. Maybe you use ticketing, or maybe you use different types of labels to really describe what type of work is being done in the branch. So I usually like to prefix my branch names and say, let's say I had a ticket that was like 5141. It's a UX ticket, and I am going to explore button shape.
So this might be something coming from like a project management tool, Jira, Asana, or something like that.
Exactly. Got it. So I can go in, I can create my branch, and now I'm free to work in right here in my branch. So let's say we want to go try some pill buttons. Maybe we want to come in here and say, I want to use some blue buttons.
Beautiful.
I had a little piece there. So let's just leave our colors for now. And maybe I just want this to be bold instead, just add a little bit more weight onto my button label here. And I think that this looks good. I think that we've gone, maybe I want to test this. I can share and I can get a link directly to this branch and share that out to get feedback. We'll talk a little bit more about that here as we go on, but for the sake of this, let's say we've gone through and we're ready to merge this change in. Once again, we can go and review our changes, and we can see the button has been edited, and it impacts the different variants by changing the one. And I can say, yes, that looks good. And then once I merge my change in, it's now there. And if I look at my assets here, I'll notice that my button is now changed in the assets panel as well. If I had this library published, I could now do a publish, and then everyone would be prompted for the update for this button.
Right. So previously flows where you might have been putting you've got new components. Maybe you're putting them on another page. Maybe you're trying to do naming conventions where you're saying this is, this is in testing, or this is something that we're working out, or maybe you are actually using the period or underscore at the beginning of the name trick to actually hide it from getting published until you're absolutely ready. You can now just use a branch to actually handle a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
One important note here, I think, would be that you won't be able to publish from the branch. So you won't be able to fork your actual published team libraries. The team library will always come from what's in the main branch and what is currently published. So the branching is great for exploration, proposals, ideas, things like that, but you'll want to make sure that you put them back into the main branch when you're ready to, into the main file when you're ready to publish again as well.
Absolutely. And another area where this is really beneficial in a design system use case is really about a contribution model. And, for folks who maintain a design system and those who consume it, we also talked a little bit about some of the use cases earlier where, contributions, maybe there is something that works better in a use case for a product team. And you don't necessarily always want to open up your design library to everyone in the organization to be able to edit it. So what we're going to show here, Anthony, let's say Anthony has a ticket and he wants to increase the font size on the button because he wants the buttons to be more legible. Now, Anthony is not actually an editor on our file. You can see he's only a viewer, but he does have editor access in the organization because he's another designer and he has product features he works on, but he'd like to make a recommendation to do a design system update. So I'm going to stop sharing here and let Anthony show a little bit of what that workflow looks like.
Definitely. I'm going to go ahead and take over here on my end. I'm going to say share screen. Great. There we go. Get out of this. Awesome. So so picking up from that point right there, you'll notice that I'm in the same file as Chad, but I'm actually just a viewer in the file. So I saw a couple good questions just around who has access to work on branches, create branches, and things like that. You've got to be an editor in your organization to use branching. So again, designers and things like that. If you're just a viewer role, you'll need to be an editor to actually use them. But if you're just a viewer on a file, we actually give you a little bit more control, and you can actually create your own branches on a file where you're just a viewer, where you only have view permissions. So what I mean by that is you can see it says I'm view only here, but let's say I'm not on the design systems team, right? I'm just a designer and I have a proposal. Maybe I was using these buttons, or maybe I did get a ticket where I'm supposed to come in and change something in the design system, but I'm not one of the owners of the design system. Or I have a good idea of how this component can be more expressive. Maybe I want to go and change something in the base component, and maybe add in a place for an icon or something like that. That's something that I want to change. So I can't edit the main file, but I can actually create my own branches. So I could come in here, and again, I might have a ticket name or something like Chad was showing, where how you can match your different systems together by using consistent naming conventions, making it easier for everyone. If they see your branch and they see a ticket with the matching name, or if a developer has a branch with a matching name, you can do those types of things as well to have better coordination with your different your different counterparts on your product teams. Let's go ahead, and for now, I'll just say this is I'm gonna actually do we'll keep this I'm gonna do something like feet update button. I used to do a lot of development, so I get in the habit of doing sort of like camel case, lowercase, kebab case kind of writing things. If you want to, though, and if you're working with a small team, it's totally fine to do, however you want to write these. Anthony's awesome button, something like that too as well, right? So you can really use branch names for how it's going to make most sense for your teams. For the sake of it, I'm going to go with feet awesome button. There we go. Cool. If you do enough development, you sort of get in the habit of not using spaces and file names and things like that, and only using capital letters when you're doing camel casing. You'll see here. So I'm now in that branch again, right? So I'm in my branch. I have edit access to my branch, but I don't have edit access to the main file. So if I were to go back to the main file, you'll see that I'm still a viewer over there. But here, I've actually got all of my editor controls that I need, so I can go ahead and I can update these things however I want. I think we said we wanted to bump up the font size a little bit, so I can go ahead and do that. Go to our base component, bump that up. Oh, look at that nice auto layout kicking in too. Beautiful. Put a little more space between these. Here we go. Use our smart selection tool. Awesome. So now I've made some changes in my branch. In fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to add a new component here too as well. So I'm going to disconnect this, recreate this as a new button, just so that we have a little bit of a different component here too as well. So I've gone ahead and I've made some changes, and I'm going to call this, you know, maybe I'm going a little bit rogue as a designer. I'm just calling this Anthony's awesome button. There's a good chance I may not want to be like merging these types of things in automatically, in the sense that I might need to get review from someone who works on the design team, right? So one great way that you can do this is that we mentioned earlier that all of the features from Figma work in a branch, just like it's another, almost like another file, but it's actually just a branch on this file. So everything from multiplayer mode, but also things like commenting as well. So I can go ahead and I can actually leave a comment back to someone on the design systems team. You know, I could say something like, hey, Chad, you know, I need you to, can I get a review on this? And post that. Chad will get notified. He'll be able to, he'll get the same notifications from normal comment system. He'll be able to come into the branch. Oftentimes I find that we see with larger design systems teams that they'll generally have a regular cadence to these types of reviews, meaning that you know, every other week, maybe once a month, something like that, you'll have a session where you actually sit down together and you'll talk about your changes. Maybe you'll re-audit your design system for the next batch of changes, things like that, sort of working in like a sprint pattern for how you make changes to your design systems. So you can see here, Chad has actually came into the branch. So here we can do multiplayer in our branches, just like we're in a normal file as well. So he can come in, he can review this, maybe give me some feedback, and says, oh, what's the use case? Yeah, okay, so maybe I went a little bit rogue as a designer and I shouldn't be having Anthony's awesome button. So we might go in and do some reviews and things like that as well. But I at least bumped up the font size, and so hopefully I can get like a looks good to me on that. And then Chad would actually have the ability to go in and merge this. You see, as a viewer on the file, even though I can edit my own branch, I can't actually merge those changes back in because I'm not the owner of the main file, or I'm not an editor on the main file. So I don't have that access, but Chad could go ahead and do that. For the sake of this one, Chad, maybe if you just want to bump me up to editor role so I can go ahead and go through that process again real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. There
Awesome.
you are.
Great. Okay. So I should be an editor now on the file. Let's go ahead and reload this. Cool. Review and merge changes. So now that I'm an editor on the main file, I can also merge the branches in as well. So I'm going to go to that review changes dialog that we're looking at here. It's doing a quick check for conflicts and any of the other changes that I've made here as well. We'll just let this finish. Cool. So we can see here that I've added my new button. I've changed some, I actually did not, I changed something about the base button. So we have that here as well too. But you can see here, I've actually got some of our design system changes. Again, it's showing me if I have things like variants and if I have things like components, styles, or anything like that, you're going to get a nice readout of exactly what was affected. So you'll know that if you did a change that has sort of like a sweeping, you know, a drastic change to a lot of different components, you're going to be able to see that very quickly and identify it. So if you accidentally made a change and it says, this is a change to 600 components, and you weren't expecting that, you can catch that before you actually need to merge those changes back into as well. Again, we can use that cool overlay technique. You can see how much I sort of just increased the font size, and I also increased the size of the frame over here as well. So we can look at a side-by-side comparison of what changed. We can also use that 50-50 mode. Again, this is, for this example, it may not be as useful, but we're going to show a couple more where that's pretty powerful as we go through it here as well. Happy with the changes. I can merge those changes back in, and now I've got those changes back in my design system file here. I messed with the base component a minute ago, so that's why you're not seeing it here, but that's how we get it back into the file. With that, let's go ahead and look at a couple of the other use cases here that we have as well too. So we're looking at design systems, but again, as Oscar mentioned in the beginning here, there's a ton of use cases beyond just design systems too, right? So maybe we want to be branching on actual features, on actual design files that we're working on, not just our components and our styles and things like that, but the actual designs. We want to branch not because we're changing the component, but because we have new ideas, or we want to do some testing, or we want to do anything like that. So let's look at a couple of those cool examples here. First one that I want to show here is looking at a little bit of A/B testing as well, too, right? So let's say you have something like maybe we want to do a little bit of a growth experiment, right? We're trying to track how this text is doing. Are we getting people to actually click this banner ad and get some additional orders that are going through and things like that? So we weren't doing a little bit of a growth experiment that we want to validate. Previously, and you can still do this when you're experimenting with your designs, is, you might make a couple extra frames. You might, change some colors and doing things like that directly in the main file. But it gets a little bit harder to prototype and to test and do things like that because we're all on the same page, or we've got to create multiple pages, and then we've got to keep track of all that kind of stuff. So branching can actually really help with these types of situations, where what we can do is, instead of creating additional frames here, I'm just going to go ahead and create a branch, and we'll just call this A/B test, A/B test on banner. And I should probably, say which test this is, right? Like the new test. You could do date systems, again, so far these naming conventions, things that are really going to help you identify which branch is which. Just general best practices there as well. Very similar to how you're doing things like naming pages. So again, we always use things like emoji conventions or just very descriptive names as to what it is that you're trying to create here. We're going to bump this up to $50 off. Cool. So we're going to create this branch. We now have that branch, and I want to test out some A/B testing. So we're going to not only change the price here, but we're also going to make this a little bit more visible. We'll go for a nice sort of darker, make sure that we're still hitting our accessibility contrast levels. So I've got something like this. And again, I'm in the branch, and now here's where it's a little bit different. I'm not going to immediately merge this branch in or anything like that, because we want to do some testing with this. And what's cool is that every branch has its own prototype link as well. So if we open up a couple of different things here, I'll put these side by side so you can see them. Go back to our main file here. I now have our main file, which has its own prototyping link, which I can open up. And I have our A/B test that we're doing here, or our B test. And you can see that each of these have a unique URL. So I can actually have two prototyping links for each one of these. I can test out these experiences. I can see what we're doing here. Again, this is a rather small example of a type of experiment. And this might be something that you can even just do straight in code, but you sort of see where you can take this with, if you want to do more complicated flows or more complicated changes. Maybe you've got something like a landing page or a different experience for how somebody maybe scrolls through a collection or something like that. And you can use these links independently. They're each going to have their own URL, and they're each going to have their own sort of ability to share out to individuals as well here too. When your test is successful, you can go ahead and merge that back in. Before I do that, Chad, anyone, just want to make sure that if there was anything else on the growth experiment stuff there. Chad, I know you had some thoughts on this one, I think, but I might have covered it for you. So.
Yeah, one thing that I like to say with this one is, perhaps you're running multiple tests early on in the design process to narrow down what is going to be like a true built out production A/B test. So you may have 4 or 5 different screens and scenarios. Mm-hmm. And ultimately you're going to want to take whichever one is the most performant that you move forward with and merge that one to become your new main. So, previously I've seen folks do it where they might use different pages and do different prototypes, but then you have all of those excess pages, or there's not an easy way to archive them to come back to later. So the nice thing with using branches is you can still keep track of those previous explorations that were done and archive the ones that you're not going to move forward with, and they'll still be there for reference later.
Yeah, great point. Great point. In fact, we could even look at this review, maybe we're reviewing our changes here. This might be a fun one where you can actually sort of see the difference between the overlay as far as what's changing between the two. Also, what's great is in the side-by-side, you'll notice down here, we actually get some pretty detailed, pretty granular change details as far as what text has changed, which the fill style on the rectangle that I changed as well. So you can actually, as Shayna and Kiko both mentioned earlier, sometimes it can be really hard. Visual diffing can be a little bit harder to sort of interpret what has changed, whereas with line by line diffing for code systems, that can sometimes be a little bit easier to sort of see the differences. Here, we can actually get a written understanding of that information as well too, so we can actually look at them together. I do love the behavior too as well, where both of the panes will move simultaneously. So if you want to just compare two parts of the same design, you can just very quickly go down here and check that out as well. Yeah, and so to Chad's point here too, let's say this was actually not one of our tests that we thought was successful. It was too aggressive, didn't work. People were turned off by the red or something like that. We can actually go up to the top here, and editors on the file, similar to being able to review and merge, have a few additional options that they can do. They can decide to duplicate the branch as a new file. They can rename the branch, and they can also archive. If you archive without merging, that's basically just going to archive the branch so that it goes into a special archive. Let's go ahead and just run the archive on that one. Where you can see we're back now in the main file. In fact, I'm in the main file twice. There we go. And if we go up to see all branches, this is where you can see all of the branches that you have. We currently don't have any active branches. I can see branches that are mine, which I currently don't have any that are active as well, but we can look at all of our archived branches. And again, there's two ways that a branch is going to get archived. Either you just archived it without merging, or these green ones here that are tagged with merged, meaning that they were merged in and then it gets automatically archived because it was merged back to the main file. So this is a great way to, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do with this archive here too, as well, as far as just using this as a place to reference those earlier ideas for ones that we either decided to put back in our main file, or maybe ones that we didn't, just ones that we wanted to merge, but we wanted to come back and take a look at. And you can still restore from those, restore those branches here as well too. You can also permanently delete them. If this gets very cluttered and you're trying to keep your archive clean for any reason, probably a good case would be something like a design system. You might want to keep your non-merged branches, trim those branches a little bit so you can go, or prune them, I guess. You can come back in here and do that as well. One other test to show would be, let's look at something like, because we have the other prototyping links as well, we can use that same technique of something like an A/B test also with testing things like prototyping flows and whatnot. So again, similar concept, but you don't have to be limited to just a small single experience of a 1 to 2 change or something like that. You can have an entirely different flow with lots of frames. You could even have things on multiple pages if the two were not part of the same flow. Because remember, when you create a new branch, you actually get, the branch has all of your pages in it as well. So it branches at the file level, which is really important. You're not just branching on that one page. So if you do have your multiple flows broken up into different pages, right? You've got maybe a homepage test. You've also got a user test that you want to have a different version of. You could come in, create a branch for that. So let's say we want to have a different flow than our normal flow because we want to test some new things. So we're going to say new checkout flow. Create a branch here. And now I want to update my flow. Maybe I've got some new screens I'm adding in, or I have something about the shopping cart experience that I want to change. You know, maybe we want to actually have the shipping details come before, and just trying to optimize our flows. And we want to be doing some testing in this branch. Again, I can use those prototyping links. I can test these branches. And because we have all of the features of Figma here as well, I can even do things like remote user testing, right? I can actually use observation mode to follow someone around in the prototype. With the new app that we have, the new Figma app, you can now send someone a link to the prototype on their phone that they can then run through. You can observe them on the desktop as they're doing that, and then leave comments for yourself too. You know, you could say, you know, user struggled here or something like that. You know, as you're going through it, probably want them to be more descriptive than that, but just as a quick example. And again, we're going to have all of those features. So you're going to get those comments in your branch, and you'll be able to actually sort of isolate that experience and all of that feedback that was for that one particular experiment into that branch as well. When you go to archive that, or when you go to merge that branch, those comments will get archived with that branch as well. So it's not going to merge those comments back into the main file. It's going to keep them with the branch in your archive. So if you do need to get back to them, you can just go to the archive. You can open the branch. You could restore the branch too as well if you needed to. Awesome. See, we've got a ton of questions coming through. I'll pause there if anyone else had anything that they wanted to add to that, but Chad, I don't know if you wanted to, or I guess I can go through, why don't I go through the, some of the advanced use cases here. I think we actually maybe covered a fair amount of this stuff as far as let's look at how we can actually, what happens when someone's actually updating the main file as well too, right? So everything that we've been looking at here has been working very smoothly because no one's actually been editing our main file, right? There haven't been any changes to the main file. So if you picture the tree, right? When we branched, the tree didn't keep growing, but what happens if the tree keeps growing while you're out on your branch? Let's go ahead and take a quick look at that. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up a branch here, or actually I'll just stay in this new checkout branch that I have. And Chad, why don't you go ahead and make a change to the main file?
Yeah, let me jump in here. So if I'm in the main,
on that yeah.
And let's say that, we were back to exploring the banner again, and we decided that the $50 did work in a subsequent test, and it was just being blue. So I've made some changes in the main file there, and let's say that this all looks good to me.
Cool. So when Chad did that, you'll notice that we actually have something new up here at the top. We're saying, hey, there are updates available for this branch, meaning that there are updates from the main file. Do you want to merge those in? Because what we can do is we can actually take our branch that we had going off the side, and we can say, yeah, let's go ahead and take those changes that we had in main and move our branch up to where the tree is currently growing right now so that we have all the new updates that came from the main file. Good example might be that another designer was working on a branch and that branch got merged back into the file while you were still working on yours. This allows you a simple process to avoid having to deal with lots of complicated merge conflicts. There is a way to handle merge conflicts if you do happen to edit the exact same thing. But again, with the granularity that we have in the multiplayer experience and the way that the branching works, unless you're touching the exact same object, you're not going to have to do a merge conflict resolution. But here we can just go ahead and accept these updates from main. I can see the things that Chad actually changed over here as well. And I can say update from main. I will get those changes in and I can say apply changes. And I can now actually see that new banner that Chad has here in the file. So my branch now is up to date with what was in the main file. So when I go to merge my changes in, I don't have to worry that I'm accidentally going to mess with something that had been changed after I started my branch.
Yeah, Anthony, I think another thing that'd be great for us to show here is, we've shown a lot about when we are in the file and seeing the branches, but there's a great question about, what happens if we're at the file browser? Can we see if a particular file has branches on it?
Great question. And you can see here back out at the file level, any file that has branches on it, you can actually see there's a little drop-down menu right here. So you can either double-click on the file and go directly to the main file. You can also go straight to a branch from the file browser as well. So if you go to the drop-down, you can select that. You can switch which one is being visualized in the file browser experience, and then you can open that file directly here as well, meaning that you can set different, if you had enough content change, you can actually use that thumbnail as you're looking at the different branches to see which one it was. So, you might say, oh yeah, my new checkout flow. Okay, that's right. I know that one looked a little bit different than my other one. So you can come back into your file and edit that as well. Very cool. Awesome. Yeah, I think we've covered most of the stuff. I'd love to get to some of the questions that we have that are coming through here. So, seeing as we have 100 so questions that have already been answered, I want to make sure that we can cover a couple of other good ones that we saw here. So, thank you for everyone who was asking questions. I know that most of them. Do we have any, one that came through earlier that I think would be a really fun one would be, is there a way to give descriptions to your branches? I mean, I'll ask maybe Oscar, Shayna, Kiko, if there was any consideration to that, like what if you could give a name to your branch or not?
Yeah, that is in the works. So we're currently going to build out a way for you to basically title your merge request and add a description. You'll be able to tag reviewers. And that's all currently in development as we're still in beta and still looking to build out a couple more features. So stay tuned.
Awesome. It's going to be cool. One of the things that's pretty neat is that when you do bring your branches back in, let's go back to the main file for a second here, and let's take a look at the version history of our main file. One thing you'll see here is that all of our branching actions are being tracked here as well, and you do get the name of your branch. So the descriptive name of your branch is important in that sense, because as you're looking back in your version history, you're going to be able to see when you branched, but also when a branch was merged back into the file. One thing to note, which is kind of cool about the version history here, is that it actually does 2 quick saves. It does one save right before you merge and another save after you merge. So you actually have 2 points that you can grab from, so that just in case there was anything that was that hadn't been saved right before you merge the branch in, it makes sure to do that really quick, so that way you actually have a point in time that you can come right back to in the event that you want to revert your merge. And the way that you revert your merge is you can just use the version history and just go back to before the merge existed. The branch, if it was merged, will still exist, but it will be archived. So you'd have to go restore that if you wanted that branch back again too as well. Cool. Awesome. Ooh, API support. Kiko, do you think we're going to get some API support for branching and merging?
In the future, but we don't have a committed timeline yet, but it's definitely in our roadmap.
Awesome. Yeah, I could imagine some pretty complex flows there as far as people tying into their, I know someone's going to do it. So whoever's out there listening, somebody's going to figure out a way once we have those APIs to tie it into GitHub and things like that too as well. So that would be awesome. Or maybe tie it into some project management tools or something.
Anthony, great question that we have here in the Q&A. So thinking about designer and developer collaboration and handoff process, being able to send a link to individual pages or files today, what about with using branches? So let's say that we wanted to restore the branch you had created for the banner, and we wanted to hand that off to engineering. Could we maybe show what that looks like?
Yeah, Chad, do you want to drive on that one, or?
Sure.
Cool.
Let me fire up here.
Awesome.
All right. So if we come back in here and I go back to look at all of the branches, and we decide that, hey, and I missed your banner right there. Bottom one. So I'm going to actually restore this branch so I can work on it again. All right. So let's say that we have tested and this banner is going to be a good one for development. So we can keep this branch and actually share this out with an engineer who can then come in specifically to this branch. They'll have just the inspect view when they're in here, and it'll be isolated here. Now, what's great is if your engineering partner is working on their own code branch, you can keep this design in its branch to have a QA against. So once they've built the feature in their branch and it's ready for QA, you can now compare that into this branch. And when everything's good and it gets merged on the development side, then you can merge in your banner on this side. And that way the code source of truth is the same as the design source of truth. Also talking a bit about the merge conflicts here. Again, we have this update from the main file that we had done earlier where we did a blue banner, and now we have the red banner. So if I look here, these changes have been made in the main file. So I can apply those changes, but maybe I've applied these and I'm saying, oh, it's now going to remember that I already have my red one here, and I can go in and now I can merge.
Awesome. We also had another good question too. The updates from main piece as well. I believe that it could just be that we are working in the file pretty repetitively, and I might have dismissed it, but I believe that there's a toast that will pop up sometimes, right? Or a banner. Shayna, is that, or Oscar?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. You get a little kind of banner in the corner,
Yep.
And also, if you're like in the review, in the merge view, you also get like a banner that tells you if you want to update before you're merging.
Awesome. Yeah. So actually, Chad, I'm going to take over for a second here real quick and just see if I can trigger this as well real quick, just so we can sort of take a look at it. But yeah, so it is more than just that little blue banner in the corner. You'll actually have the full toast in the corner, similar to like you have new updates from a published library. So I might have just dismissed it earlier when we were working on it, but let's say if I were to create a quick branch, so new component, create this, I'm now in my branch. If we go back to the main file.
I've got you. I'm making some changes
okay.
there.
Yeah, if you make some changes there, I should get it. I might just have dismissed it too many times already in this file, but you should see it as you're going through it. In fact, if you watch the video from config, you'll see it in a few of the examples that we had there as well. Yeah, I'm not getting it. Interesting. Well, something for us to take a closer look at too, as well too. There was a great question I saw. How can we use branches that have for pre-existing files that have large multiple pages? Will branching duplicate those pages? It will. So you definitely want to think about your sort of migration process there. If depends on what your pages are for, right? So if you were using those as iterations on your ideas, there's no reason why you can't continue to use pages, right? You can use pages in conjunction with branching. I tend to find that pages are valuable when I'm very early on in my iterative phases and I want to actually have two things right in front of me constantly because I want to look at one, look at the other, maybe very quickly switch between the two. Maybe I have components that I've made there that I want to make sure that all of my instances are impacted at the same time. Pages would still be valuable in that case as well too. I think with branching, what's nice is because branching is opt-in, meaning that you don't have to change anything about your files today. You can continue to use your workflows and just sort of add this on. You can probably start on your next feature or your next thing where you maybe would have previously made a page. You can go ahead and make a new branch instead. And that'll be a quick way to go about that. Awesome. Very cool. Oh, wow. These questions are getting answered so fast. We've got so many Figmates going with us on the end here. Awesome. So yeah, to that question, Josh, if it updates the library file, if you update the main file, does it update the branch? Only if you accept the changes. If you don't accept the changes, it's fine. You might just have more conflicts that you need to resolve, meaning you got to choose between the two. Do you want the version that was in the main or do you want the version that was in the branch there as well too? And yeah, so I see a lot of questions coming through around the who this is available for. Currently, this is available for the orgs plans. We did a lot of research on this and looking at how we can make this most valuable for teams of specific sizes and things like that. So it's currently available in beta for orgs. There's a sign up form that we'll be dropping into the chat. It's probably already in there too as well. We do want to hear from professional teams as well. If this is something that's going to be valuable for you, please let us know because that's the kind of feedback that we're looking for. And yeah, that's that. So yeah, currently orgs, and then there's a beta link that you can sign up for it as well too. Awesome. Looks like we've got time for maybe one more question here. I'm going to go ahead and just see what we've got in the stream. Themable designs. We'll probably do another office hours for that one, so we can come back to that too as well. Viewers in a file, can they see branches that have been archived? Yes. So viewers in a file can see the branches. Specifically, anyone with can view access in the main file can view branches, and anybody with can edit access can also view those branches and then have the additional controls of being able to rename, archive, duplicate, and then actually merge those branches back into as well. Very cool. Awesome. Yeah, I guess something that would be kind of fun would be, you know, Kiko, Shayna, Oscar, I'd love to know a bit more like, where do you see this going? What, you know, we mentioned things like maybe adding in a little descriptions for the actual branches that are getting merged in. Anything else that the team was considering that we would be looking at for the future, or?
Yeah, I think so. Like we are working on kind of like a more official review workflow, which will include like those features that I mentioned before. Really, I think we're excited to just like get it in front of more customers and to get more people using it and to get more feedback. So excited to talk to more of the customers we'll be adding to the beta.
Nice, nice. Great. I think with that, we will probably go ahead and move to our closing. Thank you to everybody who asked 160 questions. Thank you to the team who's been answering them just really well in the chat over here as well. If we didn't get to your question, we apologize, and definitely feel free to follow up with us either on Twitter or anything like, or